Hi, I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of today's newsletter is going to be toxic masculinity and healthy masculinity. Well, obviously we hear a lot in the news and the media, especially these morons on TV that are always talking about toxic masculinity. And so I've got two emails from two different guys. The first one is from a guy who was in the process of checking into his hotel with his girlfriend when he witnessed another guy that was in line just absolutely berating his girlfriend after what happened. I won't give away the surprise of what happened, but it's interesting. And so he also made an observation of why men put up with that kind of toxic behavior from women as well. And so the second one is a really good success story. It's from a guy who he'd been married for several years, got kids with his wife, and they hadn't had sex in 4 years. He was 150 pounds overweight. And so after reading my first book, 3% Man, which you can read for free at understandingrelationships.com, just subscribe to the newsletter. What happened was he lost 150 pounds, their sex life has returned, they're like kids, or I should say teenagers in love for the first time again, and he's also teaching this stuff to his children so they can be balanced and have a balanced sexual polarity. This is an interesting topic because it's in the news all the time, and you always got people talking about toxic masculinity as if masculinity is a bad thing. The world must have masculinity, and men and women both have masculine and feminine energies. It just depends on which one is dominant. So I got a quote that I wrote, and then we'll jump into the first email. So the quote says, "Toxic masculinity doesn't exist. It's a term invented to weaken and tear down strong men by Marxist beta males and females. Toxic masculinity is simply another way to describe guys who are jerks. All men and women have both masculine and feminine energy. In most men, masculine energy is dominant. In most women, feminine energy is dominant. In all healthy relationships, including gay and lesbian relationships, because I coach a lot of gay and lesbian people, there must be a balanced sexual polarity of masculine and feminine energy in order for there to be sexual attraction. Otherwise, without sexual polarity, couples become like platonic friends and roommates instead of lovers, and the sex life becomes non-existent. The quickest way to return any troubled relationship to a balanced and healthy one with a great sex life is for both partners to start acting congruent with their natural dominant sexual essences." So with that said, I'm sure some heads are probably exploding after that quote, but I don't care. Cry more. I'm sure there'll be some people in the comments, "There's no such thing as a beta male or a beta female, coach. You don't know what you're talking about." Like, yeah, right. That's why everybody in society understands what alpha and beta is. They know it. We know it when we see it. And we know beta when we see it. We know masculinity when we see it. We know alpha when we see it. We know weakness when we see it. It's obvious. And to pretend it doesn't exist, it's usually some weak-ass bitch that doesn't like to hear the truth. And I don't care. Cry more. Go follow somebody else. I don't need it. I'm here to help real men and real women reach their full potential. Anybody else too weak? They can go on down the road. Don't care. Don't need it. They're not helping the community. They're not helping the world. I don't care. So, with that said, let's go through the first email. He says, "Hey Corey, I had a little epiphany around your material the other day. I was in a rental car line in Orlando heading over to Cocoa Beach for the first Thunderbird Air Show in 2021. He says, "Finally." I know, it's like, shit needs to get back to normal. Enough with these tyrannical lockdowns. Man, it's going to be interesting the next year or two what happens when the backlash comes from all this. When people recognize that everything that our leaders did shows how incompetent and stupid they were. I'm looking forward to that because lots of people are going to get served some humble pie. There was a young couple in line with us, and when we got to the counter, mayhem broke out. Apparently, she had made the reservation at the wrong location. She thought she had prepaid it, which she hadn't, and it was going to cost them dearly to get a rental car for a week. Then her credit card was denied. Yikes. The guy went nuts on her, calling her all kinds of names, all in public view. This is toxic masculinity. The reality is, the man, if he'd have been a real man, he would have handled it. He was acting like a beta male. Real men don't lose their shit. And real men don't expect their girlfriends or their wives to run the household. They handle things. So the only person he should have been mad at was himself for his lack of leadership. He says, my little spinner, his girlfriend obviously, 102 pounds soaking wet, nice, watched all of this and wondered, why does she put up with that behavior? And he says, which got me to thinking, she puts up with it because she perceives him to be strong even if he's abusing her, which is true. That's why women stay with jealous and insecure guys, is because they give off the perception, and I wrote about this in 3% Man, they give off the perception that they're really masculine and really strong initially. Even though the guy's toxic, he's acting masculine in a lot of ways, and this helps make her feel safe, even though she gets berated by him. I didn't say it was healthy, because, as you all know, no drama allowed. Should be a way of life for everybody, but unfortunately there's a lot of people in this world that put up with it. The epiphany was that women will put up with a lot of crap, even abusive behavior, to be with a man they perceive as strong. Totally agree with that. And that's spot on. He says it shouldn't be a surprise. The corollary for, and this is interesting, he says the corollary for guys is we put up with a lot of crap if she's smoking hot and good in bed. Very true. So would that be toxic femininity? You don't hear that term. I wonder why. Because they have to weaken the strongest in our society. And by the way, when they want to ban the AR-15, here's the interesting stat about rifles. It's an epidemic. Well, most gun violence is pistols. It's gang violence in cities, the inner cities. Usually they're all, I think all of them, if you look at the numbers, are all Democratic controlled and have been Democratic controlled for decades. Obviously their policies ain't working. But when you look at the stats, most gun deaths are gang violence and suicides. How many people a year die from rifles? Not just the scary AR-15, the assault rifle, as the leftists and the media like to call it. All rifles combined. Anybody have any idea? Typically it averages somewhere around 300 people a year. In a country of over 300 million, where over 100 million Americans, 100 million, are armed to the teeth, most of them having an AR-15 of some style, yet we only have about 300 people a year being killed with all rifles combined. It's not an epidemic. There's only one reason why politicians want to ban the AR-15. That's because politicians fear. Here's the interesting thing about America, is that Americans are the equals of their government. Period. That's why we have military-style weapons, if you want. We are the equals of their government. They are our clerks. They work for us. And the reality is there's only one reason why they want to ban that particular rifle. It's because they're afraid that when they do what they really want to do to the American people, that the American people will turn their AR-15s on them. And that's exactly why it's written into the Second Amendment. It's to, as a last resort, as a hedge against, and to protect ourselves against a government that has become tyrannical. So anytime these idiots are talking about we got to ban these AR-15s, they're lying. About 2,000 people a year die from constipation. So more people die from constipation than all rifles combined. What does that tell you? Is there a national emergency to end constipation? Nope. Anyways, that was my little rant for the day on that particular subject. I'm sure some people get buttered, But facts are facts, data is data. The truth is the truth. If you look at history, whether it was Nazi Germany or Stalin's Russia or China, so one of the first things tyrants always do is take away the guns from the people and say, well, you're going to be safer. The only thing it has to do with tyranny. No matter what they say, the numbers do not back up the epidemic, this emergency, this national emergency, because it's all bullshit. That's what it is. It's fucking bullshit. So, with that said, I'll go into the second email. So the second email says, Dear Coach, roughly 1 year ago, I was 150 pounds heavier, depressed, and a complete pussy with overwhelming social anxiety who lived to please his wife. Not a good way to go, my man. I was that guy at the mall who followed his woman around like a beat dog. No surprise that my wife was equally miserable and overweight due to my complete lack of masculinity and leadership, and where we were nearing a 4-year sex dry spell. Wow, that sounds fun. It's like, why even be married? You're roommates at that point. But good for you for having the balls to say, you know what I'm doing, it's not working. Need to figure out what I need to do right. And having the guts to change, having the guts to read a book like mine and implement it in your life. So he says, to keep this story short, I listened to your book on Audible somewhere around 20 times in 3.5 months. I lost count and ingrained it into my soul. I say it all the time, the best success stories come from the students that learn the information backwards and forwards. They read it 10 to 15 times. And when I do phone sessions with guys, I hear it all the time. Yeah, I read it, if they've been following me for 4 or 5 years, yeah, I've read it once or twice, and that was a couple years ago when the relationship started. And then they go back through when there's problems, or they get dumped, or there's a breakup, or she needed space, and they recognize, well, I didn't learn all this other stuff, and I didn't listen. You're right. I should have listened to you. But it is what it is. But this is why this guy's got a great success story. So he says, and now, 1 year later, my wife and I are trim, laugh often, and are fucking like newlywed rabbits. That is awesome, bro. I'm so proud of you. But it gets better, and there's more. For only $19.95, you can double your order. He says, I've discovered that my wife is incredibly feminine now that I am centered, and my management of her attraction level is textbook. You are the leader of your household. This is healthy masculinity. Healthy masculinity enables femininity to blossom and feel safe enough to blossom and let her man be the leader, because he demonstrated that he's competent at being a leader. The instruction from your book that women are like cats really clicked for me and played a huge part in what I was doing wrong in the relationship. Control is the worst thing you can do around women. Trying to control a woman, especially a free-spirited woman, it's always going to blow up in your face. One of the best parts in all this, my 2 teenage sons and my 10-year-old son now have a centered masculine father to observe and learn from. Amen to that, brother. We need a lot more guys like you in the world. God fucking bless you. Holy shit. We need more of you guys. Put these fucking betas in their place. Finally, I started an online business that is doing well and is helping to fund my long-term purpose of creating generational wealth for my future family tree, which I lay out my whole business model, Mastering Yourself, totally for free. This is also available at understandingrelationships.com. So if you're going to be doing things online, I lay out the framework for everything that I do in business online, so you don't have to go out and reinvent the wheel. And the one thing I will say about generational wealth, I think that's awesome that you want to do that for your kids, but the thing you got to keep in mind is think about what happened in the Rockefeller family. You had the grandfather, the great-grandfather, the grandfather, the original Rockefeller who made all his money and then passed it to his son. And then the grandkids, what a bunch of fuck-ups they were. I do not agree with putting billions of dollars in the hands, or hundreds of millions of dollars in the hands of people They grow up with a silver spoon in their mouth, with nannies, and everything's pampered and paid for them because they never struggle for anything. They don't know what it's like with average people. And then when you get people like that, those trust fund babies, they're fucking evil. The Rockefeller family, they were a bunch of fucking evil people. And the things that they've done to the world and a lot of the problems that we have now are because of them. Because that wealth that they did not earn themselves, they didn't appreciate it, and they looked arrogantly down through their nose at the rest of humanity. And we're still dealing with the repercussions of that and trying to get away from that, especially all this stuff that like toxic masculinity. It's part of the things the family got involved in so they can move society in the way they wanted to. But I'm not going to get into that. There's plenty of stuff on that kind of topic. But thankfully they've all passed away, at least all the grandkids have passed away, and a lot of the stuff that they created is starting to dissolve now that they're no longer here to keep pushing it along. So with that said, keep that in mind about wanting to give your kids tons of money so they have it easy. The reality is anything that comes easy in life, we don't appreciate it. So it's great for working capital to help them get on their feet and get them started and teach them to be self-reliant. But if they don't earn it themselves, they're not going to value it, they're not going to appreciate it. And when you have a couple of generations like what you saw in the Rockefeller family, they truly become evil people that really fuck a lot of things up in society. So, if you'd like to get my help personally, the quickest way is to go to understandingrelationships.com, click the products tab at the top of your screen, and book a coaching session with yours truly. Until next time, I will talk to you soon.